every time. Oh, by the way, I'm hurting right now. I played 2 games with Chuck, and his tactical skills are unbelievable.
Is that right? Did he beat you?
In the last game, according to the Super Engine, I had 90% chance of winning, and I made a mistake, and he just wiped me out. Every time I make a mistake, I played 2 games. Each time I made a bundle, and he just figured out the right one to humiliate me.
Boy, I wouldn't have let it be known if he'd have beat me.
Well, it looks like he taught chess for 9 years, and the only justification I have is that I play quick chess. It's really fast, so I can't really look at moves.
Yeah.
Yeah, he made
Ramon,
everything a year, a whole day.
yeah, Ramon, you would kill me. You would kill me at faster chess. I'm serious. Like
No,
I have to really like analyze it. You would destroy me at a quick game.
I'm not very good at fast chess either. Remember that my satisfaction is not so much playing chess well, but being able to afford the technology of chess, because I wanted all of these things when I was 14 and all that. So I don't really play that much. I don't really care about playing chess that much. I care about having all the toys around it.
Well, I have to honestly say that I'm quite surprised, because I've had occasion to observe a few of Raymond's games when he sent me the moves, and I always thought that he played, especially towards the end. I looked at a number of his games, and I think he's a very difficult opponent based on my observations and based on the evolution of these games. So
it was about 6 months last year when I played all the time and studied, and then I got really better and better and better. But the big difference was the following: I would make sure that out of the games, I send you the ones that I did well.
I don't know about that.
I send you the fact that they wiped me out.
Play, and I'm concluding right now that Chuck is a ringer. I think that's all there is to it. He's a ringer.
Anyway, he really set me off.
How much money did you lose, Ramon?
Huh?
How much money did you lose to him?
It's not even a question of money. It's just a point of pride.
Just my ego. I don't know what price is. Anyway, Bobby, I think Bobby told me he was not going to show today. So
Bobby maybe going to have gallbladder surgery this week, he said.
Well, I'm kind of upset that he didn't. I'm kind of upset that he didn't, prioritize our reunion over his gallbladder.
And any excuse to get out of a book club meeting, gallbladder surgery.
Anyway,
excuses.
The chapter we're doing today is kind of simple. So I went ahead and prepared something that I thought we might want to reflect upon.
Okay.
Can you people see the screen?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, this is a series of articles that I've been reading. I try not to read news of what happened there, but I try to read things that give me an insight into what is really happening. Okay. This guy, by the way, is a conservative. He used to publish, be at the Wall Street Journal, but basically the New York Times is making so much money that they're hiring the really bright people from everywhere. Okay, so this guy used to be, or is, or whatever, a climate change denier, but I read him because I read somewhere a long time ago that wisdom comes from finding people who disagree with you and trying to understand them completely. So I make a point of reading conservatives of this type. But anyway, I thought you can go ahead and read what the main points are right there. Can you read well?
Yeah, it looks, so I'm just about through it. Yeah, I think this is a pretty good analysis from a very high level of partially how Trump has been able to obtain the limited success that he has. It's also, I think, fundamentally why he's not getting a second term, because at a very fundamental level, when you sow this much distrust, you lose the ability of many people to trust you. So fundamentally, people don't trust him, but didn't trust him enough to reelect him.
Okay.
My opinion.
At one time, I made a comment about the importance of having trust in a society.
Mm-hmm.
In Argentina, you cannot have a franchise because if you have a franchise with an stranger, they will steal you. All you can do is with your family, okay? And anyway, were you here, Chuck, when I mentioned why countries in Africa that are doing the worst are the ones that there was more slavery? Were you here?
Oh, no, I don't recall that.
Well, basically
Yeah.
what happened was that in places that were slave, the people would move into the jungle, and so the slavers could not find people. And so they would bribe these people who go out and kind of gain the trust of the people in those villages, and then they get betrayed.
Oh, wow.
So they basically, what happens nowadays in those countries is that you cannot, they interfere with commerce in a big way. For example, let's suppose that you are a planter and you have bananas and you put it on a truck. In a high trust society, you will give it to the vendors and then get paid after they sell the bananas. But in places like Africa, they don't do that. And there's a whole book by Fukuyama about the importance of trust in a society where people don't trust each other commercially for contracts and all kinds of things. The society goes down the tubes. Okay, so I think this is enough for now for this. The other thing, I went ahead and got another one by Zacharias, who is this guy who brilliant guy, PhD from Harvard, that comments in CNN and and he basically take a look at the highlights above everything. Let me know when you have time to read them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so the one difference that stands out in what they're talking about here, if you get into really closed areas where there's significant media control, really closed societies, there's no need for the diversity of channels and the diversity of messages. That's the one difference. So I would say that the point that Zachary is making here is that this type of a campaign works well here because of the diversity of sources give credibility to the ideas much more than just simple repetition.
The big deal, and another paper that we talked last week was about, I should have done it this way, was what there's this called, there is something called an epistemic regime that leads to truth, where you have like scientific papers where there's refereeing and all that, and the press with that. The fact that we have all these things have destroyed it. Now, one thing that I want to go back to, the point that I thought was really important was this: trust has brought a different kind of radioactivity. First, destroys our trust in institutions, then in others, and finally in ourselves. I thought that was a very big deal there. Anyway, any comments on this?
Well, one question that I have is Trump this deliberate? In other words, like, is he this mastermind of this stuff, or is it just simply it's just this low probability event of someone like Trump, who is then placed in a position like this? Like, I mean, is is he like an evil genius or just simply
Well, I mean, the people
what he
who,
appears to be?
the people who are
narcissistic,
who have studied the guy, they think he's an evil genius. Uh, he
Really?
spends 8
Wow.
hours a day, I mean, 8 hours a day or so watching Fox News to find the right things.
Well,
And,
Yeah.
and his daughter, it's like that. She talked about what is called hyperbolic. You know, they worked on this from the father. It basically, there's a whole book about bullshit, you know, and there's a whole article in the New York Times. I mean, in Wall Street, in the Economist about how he does that. For example, his linguistic techniques are unbelievable. For example, other people, when they make a mistake, they pause. He just keeps talking,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and there's all kinds of ways that he talks that you know, normal people, when they say something false or they have a doubt or something, they pause and all that, so they give signals to people that what they're saying is false. Okay? But he's, in my
Yeah.
opinion, he's an evil genius. Otherwise, he would not have been able to be president of the United States. Okay, he would not
Well,
have been able to be.
I mean, I think that Trump does a very good job with his style of communication that can be they can psychologically dominate the thinking of people who don't see his tricks and are, you know, unwilling to question what they hear. But I'll offer a little bit of a counterpoint, because one of the patterns that I saw emerging, I don't watch Fox News, but a lot of times when I'm commuting to and from work, I have a few minutes drive each way because I only live about 4 miles from work. Even with traffic, it's a 20-minute drive at the worst. Usually it's about 15. And so I'll switch on alt-right radio, sometimes on the way into work. Sometimes I'll catch some of the early stuff in the morning. Sometimes if I'm out, the only time I listen to this stuff is when I'm out in the car. One of the patterns that I saw that emerged was that typically you would hear the soundbite from Hannity on over the weekend or going into the weekend, or you hear it on his after his evening show before he's on TV. You hear it on Hannity radio. He'll jam the same stuff at night, and then Trump would be tweeting it at 3 a.m. So at some level, some of Trump's sound bites are actually fed to him by Hannity and some of the other talking.
Yeah, but that's not my point. I mean, the way he communicates is a
Yeah.
genius. I mean, I'm talking about his communication, you know, and I mean, there's all arguments. A lot, for example, there was a paper, I mean, an article that I read recently that a lot of the time the ideas actually come from QAnon. But for example, he speaks at a third, fourth year level, which basically makes people think that he's trustworthy. But anyway, that's a whole, I mean, basically, we don't have to think that he knows already. But as far as communicating and exciting the masses, he is as talented as Hitler and Mussolini and all those people. We tend to think as academics that genius is only about doing calculus and all that, but there is genius in being a salesman and being a con man and stuff like that.
One of the things that stands out about Trump is his style of communication and his choice of words. And in many ways, when he appears to be slightly inept in his statements, that is clearly a technique he uses to gather sympathy from people who support him. So a lot of people support him because at times he communicates in an overly simplistic, almost slightly simpleton way, and people see him as someone that needs their help to continue to be successful. He's very skilled at the persona that he casts for the public is, I think, carefully crafted. And it's, you know, he's got a lot of years in front of a camera, and he's had a lot of coaching on how to present in public. And I think, you know, he has developed a persona that he's been very effective at using.
Okay, there are two issues here, Paul. One of them is the techniques of communication that he uses, okay, which is what is being said here. there's another issue why his techniques of communication are so effective. What are the conditions on the people? What is the milieu of the people that makes this technique so powerful? And they were not so powerful, let's say, when there was Walter Cronkite. Okay. But anyway, let me go ahead and go to the next article right now. To the next article. I thought this was a brilliant article by this guy, Thomas Friedman of the New York Times. And I think he hit it on the net, on the, how do you call that? Hit it on the head. Yeah, maybe I said the neck because it wasn't really on the head. It didn't go high enough. But anyway, the big deal about these is that the people in the countryside are hurting big, okay? They're going to the parking lots to get Wi-Fi and all of that. And unless there is a concerted effort to help the people in the countryside, because right now the Democratic Party is controlled by the professional class, and this guy get the idea that what Trump should do is make Kamala the Secretary of Rural Development, going into the countryside and do all kinds of things to lend them money interest-free. So there is actually broadband everywhere, and there is actually schooling, and figure out right now, one of the things of the pandemic is that they figure out that people can, can work from anywhere. It looks like, I read that 60% of the jobs in the United States that pay more than $100,000 can be done from home. So there is a lot of possibilities right now about having pods. A place like Google can have a group of 50 people in one place and 50 people in another place and 50 people in another place. And they would have the interaction, but they would communicate. There is, I think the idea of having her do that is the only thing that's going to save the country, in my opinion. That's my, so you can look at that. By the way, but one proposal, I'm reading the book right now. I'm at the end, almost at the end of the book by Mandel about the tyranny of merit. And the chapter I'm in right now is a very trenchant attack on the universities. So I am proposing that the next book that we go into, rather than going to cast, is that we go over this book because it's saying things. See, people like us are really primed because of our life and all that to look at the black and racism. We don't do that. We don't do that. But this book is going to talk about what we do for a living in a fundamental way. So I propose that we actually go over that book next. And then afterward, we go over cast. That's a proposal. What do you people think about that proposal?
No, I think maybe a separation to go to this point and then come back might be good, because when you think about, we've done a lot. We're working through a lot on the issue of blacks, but this idea, the tyranny of merit, actually sits below the surface.
Well, we are really, the big deal is the following: the only acceptable prejudice right now is against the uneducated, and we have to understand that and why. And I think it's very deep, so I think we should go over that book. But let me go to the next article that I have. This guy right here is a writer for the New York Times, and usually takes me about an hour to read his articles, because what he does, he doesn't write an article like everybody else. What he does is he just takes a topic and summarizes the opinions of all kinds of political scientists and people that are willing something, okay? Does that make sense? So he summarizes the book, a paper that was published recently on something called political sectarianism. It's a new construct in political science that have come up, and it basically, it has three core ingredients. One is othering. You can read that, the first 3 points.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Can I move? Each one of you who's ready to move, say yes or something.
Well,
I'm about halfway through. I'm down to political mobilization.
No,
So,
that will, I will go that later, just the first one, sectarianism.
yeah.
oh, yeah.
Then we're gonna talk about political mobilization, okay? By the way, this guy who wrote this, about this, he actually analyzed things, the conditions that were before the French Revolution and all that. And this guy, I thought, are people, what do people think about those 3 points? That's exactly what we have right now. Any comments on that?
Yeah, you know, one of the things that stands out for me, because I'm down here in Florida, is there's an absolute tendency for Republicans to go out of their way to make fiscal decisions that are slowly but surely bankrupting the state of Florida and under-resourcing the state of Florida. They'd rather they've given away so much money in the last year as tax privileges in one form or another, that the state is going to have some significant budget issues simply because of the impacts of the economy and COVID, rather than conserving resources. They've just been doling out more, DeSantis has been doling out more financial favors in the form of tax relief to connected individuals and connected businesses. So I see that.
The
Point
big point
three.
here is that when the state has no funds, people have expectation of the state to do things, and they don't have the funds to do that, like education and all that. It erodes confidence in the state, which, by the way, is a stated Republican goal of the billionaire right. They just want to undermine the credibility of government, so they can shrink the government to the level that they can actually drown it in a bathtub. So, but anyway, those 3 points are actually, how many of you would agree that we have these conditions right now? 3 conditions.
Yeah, I would agree.
Ken,
Yeah, I would agree.
are you, Chuck?
Yeah, yeah.
Now, there's one right here that is kind of interesting. This is a statement by Steven Pinker. He's a psychologist at Harvard that I read 3 or 4 books of him. And he said, why do people believe things? Okay, well, they believe them because they think it's true, or to affirm a myth that unites and emboldens the tribe. And I think about it, so how in the hell did I end up when I was a kid believing that when they gave me the Holy Communion, there was this piece of bread, and the guy said, oh, so whatever that, all of a sudden I was eating the body and blood of Christ or whatever. I mean, that's crazy, absolutely crazy. But I had to believe that to be a Catholic. And even today, I get rejected by my family a lot because I don't believe any of that stuff. If I want to really be fit with my family on the verge, I got to believe all that stuff. So anyway, I thought that was an incredible thing. People believe because it's true, or people believe whatever the hell is going on, as long as if it makes them belong to a group. Now, I read some research that is really interesting. When you ask people about these stupid things that they say they believe, you say, how the hell do people can believe those things? Well, there's a way of doing experiments in which they tell people there's a theory that people who say those things, they don't really believe them. A lot of them don't really believe them. They're just saying them because that's what they're supposed to do, to belong and all that, but they don't really believe them. But there is studies that they do where they pay people money if they actually tell the truth about some issue. Even with the money, these people will say the false thing because believing in those things that they hear in Fox News and all that, it makes them part of a group. So I thought that was unbelievable insight. What do people think about that?
Yeah, Vanderbilt just released a study that said 70% of the Republican voters in Tennessee believed that the election was stolen. And almost none of the Democrats, or probably none at all of the Democrats, believe that. So it's like if you're a Republican, that's what you're supposed to believe. And I guess
Well, I think
you could say the flip. If you're a Democrat, that's what you're not supposed to believe or whatever.
you know, and one of the fundamental challenges around elections in this mythology of massive fraud, one of the challenges is very simple reality is that most people don't understand the checks and balances that are built into the voting system. And the only reason I have a little bit of insight is because my wife was a poll worker for several election cycles. And so she was familiar with all of the detail that surrounds, you know, the in-person balloting. And she knew a little bit about the mail-in balloting because there's the same very similar checks and balances that are built into both processes. And if you understand a little more about what goes on in that way, you'll know that it's very difficult to actually commit voter fraud. It's nowhere as easy as people represent it to be. The representation is, oh, he's got a suitcase full of ballots and he just slips them in and they get counted. It doesn't work that way because the ballots, most states have paper trails, they have paper ballots. The majority of the vote collection is all done. It may be tallied electronically, but most states have moved to paper ballots, and there's an authentication process and a serialization. There's a separation, so ballots are secret ballots, but there's still a level of accounting for ballots that you cannot insert fraudulent. It's very difficult to insert fraudulent ballots into the process.
And let me mention something. First of all, I was really worried when you say poll watch it because I thought you were going to say my wife was a pole dancer.
Ah,
No, she's the poll worker. You know, so she and I have talked about this
when she
stuff
was working the poll.
Yeah. And we've talked about it in the past because I've asked her questions over the years, and she's explained a little bit here and there, and I've sort of built a little bit of an understanding, and so I know that it's basically nearly impossible to do that. So if I handed you a stack of ballots and you wanted to cast them fraudulently, you would have to have a corresponding set of ballots marked the way you wanted that also corresponded to sequentialized numbers that are on the existing ballots that are in a random stack. Very impossible.
Let me mention something. One thing that I learned a long time ago, and I thought about it, talking to people and reading about science and how it works, is that unless you understand how people know things, everything is opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, if, for example, I asked my cousin to read this book, Around the Walk Down Wall Street. That is it's a 17th edition that it looks at all the scams and all the stuff or whatever, and argues that you really cannot do any better than. Well, the guy went to the end of the book and to see what the guy recommended at the end of the book. But then, since he didn't know how the guy knew those things, it was an opinion. So he came up with his own stuff and invested money in acorns, and there's Robinhood and all that are basically scams for millennials. Because if you don't know, like the people who are not very educated, when the doctor said something, they don't know why the doctor say those things because they don't know how science works. So if you really want to know something, if you don't know it until you understand how the people who say those things work to know those things. If you don't know how people know, everything becomes opinion. Does that make sense? So if you don't know very well for example, the voting machines that we have used, 95% of them, all they do is count paper ballots.
That's right.
So you can go ahead and just count the ballots. So I mean, if you understand that, but they don't understand how they do this, so they fall. The one thing is I think Chuck at one time he made a comment that made me think that he's like me, somebody who really wants to understand fallacies and how we fall for it. I think there's a lesson right here that when we believe something, we have to say, am I believing it because it's true? Or am I believing it because I want to be somebody? Okay? Am I believing, are we believing what we're believing right here because we want to be among the elite in the United States who reads the Atlantic and the economists and, I feel really good about being somebody there. I think that I made it because I can read all these books and all this stuff, and I read the New Yorker and I talk to people and they take me seriously, and I read these books. That's the whole image of myself. So the question is, how much am I saying and believing because I want to nurture a self-image that gives me respect? So that's one thing that.
Sure. And I think it's an absolutely valid question to ask, is what are our motivations? And, to the same logic, we can say, well, what are the motivations of people who believe the election was stolen?
What is our, more important, what is our motivation for reading these books about racism and, whatever?
Oh, sure.
Is it because we really want to know those things and change and all of that? Or is it because we want to nurture our image of being intellectuals, open to people and fair and, non-racist, equal opportunity, all that image, which those things are not mutually exclusive, but I think we need to be aware that that's a danger. Does that make sense? At least to me.
Yeah, I think, very, very clearly, from my mind, I want to understand these issues more deeply than I do. And so I'm studying them at minimum because I want to examine my own beliefs and understand my own fallacies to the extent that I can around these subjects. And I want to know more so that I don't become trapped. I don't make decisions on incorrect ideas. And this book, Kendi has gone through so much stuff in this book. In my opinion, he's always been willing to put on the cards on the table where he's been wrong. And, at the same time, we're getting his analysis. And so the one of the secondary questions is, okay, is his analysis really correct, or are we seeing a mistake in his own thinking here as well? That's a second order when I'm reading this. My second order thinking is, okay, is Kendi making a mistake here? He's stating what he believes, but is he correct?
Yeah, a long time ago, I did an exercise. I wrote down what I want to believe about myself. I wrote down what I want to believe about myself. And, because being aware of what you want to believe about yourself, what gives you respect and all that, is something that one needs to know. Because if we don't know it, we're going to believe a lot of things that are not true just because they reaffirm what we want to believe about ourselves. So I think that's a very good exercise to really understand what you want to believe about yourself. Okay. Anyway, the next article is about the motivation of social status. Okay. And again, this is by Edsel. Edsel is this guy who I told you summarizes all kinds of. He basically interviews experts and summarizes that. So his articles are not a 600-page. The 600 word article that you guys says this thing and all that. This guy actually summarizes a lot of social, and he's talking about the importance of status. Okay, and I will go ahead and actually, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to email this to people afterwards. Okay, but rather than go over everything, I think the main. I'll just go ahead and actually email that. But the big deal is this line right here. Okay, see this one right here?
No, you're not sharing your screen. So go ahead and share your screen. I can't see the text.
Yeah,
I don't yet either.
Can you people see it?
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Got it.
Okay, this is by this guy, Thomas Edsel again, that he summarizes all kinds of research. And he talks about social status as a motivator, okay? And if you read the article, the big deal about this, the people who are supporting Trump are not necessarily the people who are the poorest and all that, but are the people who have a fear of falling. There is a fear, the way the society is changing is that the goodies are going in the direction of those people who have an education. The elites that are educated, they can do computers and all that. Definitely power is moving in that direction. And there's other people that basically their status was based on working, having a little business. See, why people often draw appeal to write, what is that? There's the first point, okay? Read the first point right there. Status.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me when you finish that. Basically, people are really afraid of losing their position in the society, the status.
Yeah.
And here's an interesting thing. People who start at the bottom, blacks and all that, they gravitate to radical left because that's the most likely thing that is going to change the situation for the benefit. You know, if you're black, you know, it's going to change, you know, whatever. And people near the top, you know, people like us, we don't have anything to lose. So believing in justice and all kinds of stuff like that doesn't cost us anything. All it does, it makes us feel that we're really holier than thou, you know? So we share all these values and all that without any consequences. So that's what basically explains why people at the bottom and people who are near the top, a lot of the time share these values. And when I say about near the top, we're talking about the professional classes because the billionaires in this country basically are not like that. Now, look at the third bullet right there. Does that make sense? Can I go to the fourth one?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the fourth point right there.
We're still looking at 1 through 3, Ramon.
I'm sorry. You have to let me know.
No, I'm saying you mentioned there's the fourth point, and there were only 3 showing there at the bottom. That's what we were reading.
Oh, there are 3 points. Okay.
No, I think you were talking about the bullet points, and then there's 3
Oh, I'm
factors.
sorry,
in
I'm sorry.
simply
Yeah,
the
okay.
bullet. Let me look at that number 3, an asymmetrical. Scoot that up.
Can you hold it for a minute?
Go the other way.
Let me go ahead and do something here. Okay, now we can talk about the points, okay? Okay, which one do you want to talk about?
I just want to go down, keep going, go down to, it's probably going to be 5C or 5.3.
Okay,
No, keep going down
I don't have any more.
a little bit more.
A little bit more. The third factor Ford describes as
Yeah,
the
that one. Yeah, stop right there.
asymmetrical increase
Yeah,
in the
that
salience of status concerns due to the political repercussions of educational expansion and generational value change. This is especially because of the progressive monopolization of politics by high status professionals, creating a constituency of cultural losers of modernization who find themselves without any mainstream political actors willing to represent and defend their ways of life. That third point is kind of interesting, more so than the other ones. You know, my opinion is that this stuff all at some level or another really has an economic underpinning. So I've said that before, that, you know, below the surface, we're really dealing with economic change that's driven by economics that are rippling across society. You know, you know, to me, the dividing line is at least as much between owners and employees. You know, I mean, I was sitting there thinking about where all the lines, and, you know, a central thing between Trumpers and non-Trumpers in general, at least in my anecdotal experience, most of the people that align with Trumpers tend to be a little bit more entrepreneurial, and they tend to think more like own business owners or small business. They agonize over small business, and it's a different perspective than someone whose primary focus is their life has been to be an employee. And that's just one area where I see the line is very clear.
Well, here we have a couple of things. There is an issue of economics.
Yeah.
But what this paper is arguing, that above economics, there are issues of status also. I mean, when, you know, Ken has said that many times, that, you know, I mean, if you have a job, you have the dignity of your job, you're respected in the community. My father was respected because he worked and provided for his family and all that. There is and basically what is really happening, according to, you know, they're basically, what we're valuing is education and being, you know, education and having these and having, you know, I mean, not so much having things is not a big deal anymore. To some extent, is culture and education and being global and being this and being a professor and being all that stuff, and that's really eroding their status. Now, this is also one of the main points of the book, The Tyranny of Merit, about what's happening, you know, why people are really feeling at the bottom. For example, one of the things that is happening nowadays, according to The Tyranny of Merit, is that we tell everybody that the way to get ahead is to have an education. So if you have an education, you're going to get ahead, you're going to get ahead. So what is that saying for the people who cannot get an education? You say it's your fault and you're worthless because you don't have any money. And that's something that I think we ought to look deeply in the book, whatever.
Yeah, but, you know, I don't mean to interrupt you, but one of the issues around that is what's very clear is the only solution at this point in the economy we live in today for most people, their only viable solution is education, because at the end of the day, a number of other elements, for example, if you are a member of a labor union who fought for collective bargaining and established solid wages based on the fact that you had solidarity amongst workers to counterpoint the solidarity that exists within the management class, those aspects that equalize the game, those aspects have been put out of business by Republicans over 35 years. So the mantra now that education is the only choice is kind of a direct result of so many other alternatives that have gone under the bus over the last 35 years.
Okay, Ken, I never figured this out completely, but Ken, and, you know, a lot of what we do is what we can do. Okay, I think, and probably Ken also thinks, that there has to be a world where people who don't have a college education still make a decent living because they have unions and all that. Okay, but
I was going to say, even if you solve the economic problems, I mean, our corporations and our military and government and everything else is almost like a feudal society. You have the educated professionals, like in the Army. I hated the Army because I was a buck private going in, and you know, you had old guys who had been in the Army for 20 years, and they had to salute a 21-year-old second lieutenant because he had an education. He had a college degree and they didn't, and he'd been through 90 days of officer training and all of that. And you couldn't be promoted from this lower class up into this upper class. And so that's the status part, or it's related to that status thing that was on the paper you just showed.
I would
Yeah.
agree that it's definitely an element.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
the point that I was trying to make, Ken, is that given the reality that we have, the only way we can help people, given the system, is by helping them get educated.
Yeah,
And that's what we can do. I mean, we don't have the power to change anything. I'm trying to get this guy, with the help of Ken, to get him to learn Python and all that. That's all I can do. But at a societal level, there has to be a system where labor, we're just doing labor and they show up to work and all of that, they can have a decent living, like it was in the old days to some extent. People who were labor, they had their house, a boat, and an above ground, pool, and they felt like they were, they made it and they felt good, and they were good people. They went to church, they took care of their family, took care of their friends, went bowling and whatever. I mean, that kind of world where people who are just hardworking and responsible,
And-
that we have to bring that. But
And I can comment directly that a large number of the people I know that are friends of my wife's, predominantly my wife's family, grew up and they were 100% labor, and almost to a person, they all support Trump now. Exactly what you say, that there's this feeling that their way of life has been under assault, that they no longer, their positions are not solid, and they're seeing their own children do less well, tried to follow the same model they did, in many cases not do as well, and they're all solidly behind Trump to a person. I can't think of the people when I was younger. My wife and I just got together. A whole bunch of people that we all knew in New York. They all worked for a living, and the same thing that right now in this pandemic, the number of people who can work from home represents the upper of all the employment. That probably represents the upper 2/3 of the workforce. So in general, if you're a person who can't work from home, you're probably not doing very well anyway.
well, the reason why Trump gained people among Hispanics and blacks is because the point is right now they feel more like poor whites than the educated people. Basically the bottom is really the ones that are not educated. And one of the things that worked, from what I understand, I read, is that Trump was very successful in telling people the Democrats want to close the economy, and these people, if I close the economy, I'm dead in the water.
Yeah.
So that's how they got the people in Miami. They were terrified that. Anyway, let me go ahead and propose a couple of things. From now on, why don't we do this? If anybody finds an article that has some big points summarized in a few bullets, what is there, and prepares a handout like this one that we can discuss. And I don't want to be the one doing it all the time, but if you find an article that is particularly insightful, I like insightful things to give me an understanding of reality rather than, oh, this bad thing happened and this bad thing happened and all that. So if anybody has anything to prepare a handout of this level, which I will send you, and we'll discuss that at the beginning. And I think we can go ahead right now, if you people don't mind, go back to the book.
Yeah. Ramon, I do want to just say, I actually really enjoy like what you do with these little one-page highlighted summaries. Probably
Absolutely.
some of the articles you've sent out, and I've been able to take a look at them. Some I haven't, but the way you boil it down to some key, really points for thought is just really, I just really value that. So.
Well, I'm assuming
just-
that not everybody has time to read all these articles.
Right.
So, I go ahead and do a summary, and I wasn't doing it as well as this time. But I decided, I think
Ah,
you have a comment.
No, I agree 100%. I think that, to see these things simplified and points, they lead into points of thought. and all of us jump in and what we think, and the truth is somewhere in the middle, and that's what we're all looking for.
Well, what I'm proposing is that the format that I have today, not only me, but if anybody has an article that are really, this is some insights that are really think that it would be beneficial for all of us to understand. And go ahead and something like that, we go over it, underline, whatever. And then at the end, I will go ahead and just email it to you, okay? Can you all people use a Word file?
Yeah, I can.
All you can do are Word files?
Word.
Microsoft Word.
Yeah, because I want to send it to you as a Word file so you can go ahead and add
Okay.
stuff if you like, rather than send it to you as a PDF. Okay, anyway, let me go ahead and just go now and go to the book. Okay, I think the book is simple this time. The book's chapter is kind of simple in my mind. By the way, I really appreciate you people. I feel that yesterday I was telling my sister asked me what was the Cuba made a change. She had two currencies, okay, and two currencies. Now it's going to have only one currency that is convertible to the dollar, okay. And I read an economist article about this change. And one of the things that they said, well, Cuba, the one problem that it has is that it doesn't allow business to incorporate. Okay. And if you know anything about business, you know that incorporation is very important for liability purposes.
Yeah.
So I went ahead and explained that. And immediately I had to explain at that level. And immediately my sister and my family said, oh, go ahead and you talk. And we are talking to my mother, I don't have anybody to talk about this level with anybody. Not really. So I appreciate having people that I can talk, who I talk about a corporation and they understand what a corporation is and stuff like that. But anyway, it's like after 50 years, letting some people into my brain, because for 50 years I've been having these conversations inside my head.
Well, it's always good to do that. The trick is not to have arguments.
No, I'm serious. I've been 40, 50 years just having this conversation with these imaginary friends and authors and all that and philosophers. Okay, here's this chapter. And I think the core of this chapter is the fact that we should treat queer blacks as queer whites, as queer whatever. There's intersectionality. Sometimes we talk about queer people. Blacks and queer, somehow they're worse than other people.
Did we skip it? What in chapter 13 on gender? Or
He's one ahead. We're on 13. We're on 14, gender. You're a chapter ahead of us. Ray.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'll go to chapter.
They were very similar. It's sort of like.
No, it's okay. I just didn't realize that, but I have 14 prepared, so it's no big deal. Okay. So you let me know.
Yeah.
You let me know.
Well, it said if you were a woman, you faced lots of challenges economically, socially, and everything. If you were a black, the same was true. If you were a black woman, it was compounded. And it also said you didn't have to be a white male to be a racist. You didn't have to be a male to be gender biased and so forth. So it's very, very similar to what he's been saying all along. He's just expanded it to another dimension here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, do you people know the story about the Peter meter?
Peter meter.
Yeah, they had this thing that they attached to the penis of people. Okay.
A Peter meter.
And it could actually detect a hard-on or the beginnings of a hard-on. And then, I mean, I'm serious about what
No,
I'm
I mean,
saying.
you're talking about a medical device.
Well, no, I mean, basically what is going on, they found people that were homophobes. And
Oh,
they found people that were homophobes and people that just kind of didn't care that much. And then they put them to watch gay porn. Okay. Now, which ones do you think that which group do you think got more excited?
The homophobes.
Turns
Oh,
out that a lot of
yeah.
people, they have something inside themselves that they hate, like being black or
Mhm.
something,
Yeah.
and they end up actually projecting that self-hate into somebody else.
Yeah.
interesting.
So one nice thing about this group is is that once in a while you can put something like pole dancing and stuff like that, and people don't reject.
Yeah, you know, all you're trying to imagine my wife pole dancing, and I'm just glad she does. But I'm sure if she just, I am sure that if she had ever identified that as a priority in her life, she would be better at it than she is now.
In other words, we are intellectual, but we're not stuck up.
Don't know. You got to have a good sense. You got to have a good sense of humor. When you were talking about the Peter meter, I kept thinking about everyone's heard of the Peter principle, and whenever we discuss our boss when he's not in the room, we always talk about how he, or this boss or that boss or whomever decision makers. The open question is whether they've risen to their proper level of incompetence or not, or they've gone to some lofty height above where they actually belong.
My problem is that as far as humor is concerned, I'm as crass as they come,
You gotta, you have to be able.
Anyway, so I wasn't able to. By the way, one of the big achievements in my life, when I knew that I understood English, when I began laughing at a Woody Allen movie. Anyway, it used to be that you could only laugh at a Woody Allen movie if you were from New York or something.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But I think if you can't see the humor in any situation, you got to, life is too much of a challenge. You got to be able to see the humor, because if you can't laugh, it's going to be tough.
Okay, well, can we keep going here?
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, I just from a kind of construct standpoint, each of us is an intersection of a set of characteristics, and whether that's income or race or gender or sexual preference or any
Experience.
number of kind of categorical variables. And but one of the things I found interesting in this chapter was basically, I mean, that was the premise that said if you hold any such intersections as either being dominant or inferior to the others, it's essentially it's contributing to, like, for example, if I'm like all about being anti-racist with respect to color of skin, but I'm still, I still hold people in higher or lower esteem based on their education, then I'm just as guilty. You can't be sort of enlightened for some of the categories and not for the others. And his example was, there was, I mean, black men who, were gender biased against black women and but as a result, they're kind of enabling and welcoming any type of categorization.
Yeah.
So I'm not explaining it very well, but I felt it was that was an interesting for me.
And let me mention, I had a personal experience. My first wife, since I have Asperger's, I had really problems with women. I didn't know whether they liked me or not. So I finally married a woman who came to me and said, "I like you." So, but the big deal is that she married me. She was an American from Louisiana, and I married her, because I was the top student, and she figured I was going to be a winner and all that. Well, throughout my life with that kind of thing, she would tell her family, he's Cuban, but he comes from a good family, but he has a PhD. And anyway, the whole idea was that somehow it was an exception from that lowly, and many years later when I divorced her, she seemed like I have had an affair with, after divorce, so she had something with somebody. She was in Germany and she had some kind of lover there or something. And she told me that, oh, I got this really nice guy from Germany, not some Southern European place. So she was really, she really, she really had all those prejudices to be marry me because she thought I was going to give her a good life. But anyway, that's what it's called calling. If you're poor black, you're then niggers. If you're poor, you're just poor. If you're white, But
Yeah.
It's much worse to be what the black people call them then niggers. And
Yeah.
it's that. But that's another thing called living as an exception. You're black. You're black. And you do everything. You cut your hair short. You wear nice clothes, and you talk like everybody else. And they accept you. The day you make a mistake, you're dead. Because all of a sudden you fall back into the stereotype. So that's one way of thinking about this kind of intersectionality. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think that's what you were more or less saying, Chuck. Did I paraphrase it?
Ken, what's your take on this chapter?
Well, it was pretty much what you said is, there's lots and lots of different ways to not see other people as humans equal to yourself, I guess. And it can be because of their color, their gender, their wealth, their educational level, and so forth. But I think what he's pointing out is, somebody from Appalachia might be discriminated against a little bit, but it's an order of magnitude larger for somebody whose skin is black, or somebody who is a black female. That you add another order of magnitude to it. I kind of wish he would put some references in there, because he quotes statistics sometimes that I wouldn't feel comfortable quoting. But, like he says, the life expectancy of a transsexual black woman is 36 years. It's probably true. I just wish he'd put a quote in there to say this is where that number came from.
Yeah.
Okay, my opinion, Ken, is that this guy is very ineffective in using statistics.
Yeah.
His use of statistics to support his argument is very weak. So we shouldn't really look at his book by his statistics. I think we have to look at this book by the insights, and especially his personal trip. His what is called, some people call this Bildungsroman, how he went from what he was to Now, here's a comment that I wanted to make in the next chapter. You know, the next chapter was talking about that we have the stereotype that gay people were all promiscuous. Okay, you know, they were all promiscuous. Well, it turns out that a lot of them are. Okay, turns out that if you have the intersection male is males tend to be promiscuous, you know, because you know there's no penalty, you know, they get as many women as possible, and then they're gay. I mean, they like men, and what ended up happening is the men are promiscuous too, so they end up with a lot of promiscuity and all that. So anyway, there's a lot of truth to a lot of these things. You know, Hispanics and on the average are uneducated, you know, I mean, which is true, and all kinds of things like that. The point is that it's very difficult to say that those statistics are not real.
Mm-hmm.
What is really important is to realize that the minute you have a person in front of you, okay, in front of you, there's so much information from talking to that person for 10 minutes that any empirical prior about what that group of people are, majority or how predominant this characteristic is that. So I call the Bayesian view, because we're not going to get ourselves out of the categorizations of groups. You know, I don't think it's possible to get rid of that. But we can act right if we realize that the minute we have a person in front of us, we got to really listen to that person, look at that person, you know, and forget about the class stereotypes or realities that we have about that group. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and the first step is just being aware of that, you know, if you go into a meeting with a Black woman who talks with a certain accent or whatever, just observe yourself and say, I've already made a whole bunch of assumptions about this person
Correct.
that probably aren't true. So I need to be aware that I'm doing that. That's, you know, first step.
You have told me that many times, you know, in one way or another. And, you know, I think you and I are saying the same thing. It's just that I'm using the language of statistician and you're using the language about really knowing people and, you know, a spiritual perspective on this, you know. I see it in terms of information, you know, I mean, you know, he's seeing it as from a moral point of view, and I'm seeing it in terms of information that you're getting about the person. That, you know, so we have two views, a moral one and a
Well, I mean, I think it's a fundamental challenge because at the end of the day, you know, what speaks with the most power is the statistics and the analysis of data behind what the general trends are. That has the most power, but yet, you know, the other point is that in a one-to-one relationship, it fundamentally has no power at all.
Okay, can we go to the next? I'm going to go ahead and share the screen again, and you let me know. My comments are basically my underlines, so and I'm trying to work on not talking too much, but it's impossible almost.
Yeah, you can go on this. This is the part where he talked about, I think, so many, majority of Black children were raised in households without a dad. And he kind of challenged that statistic. I think it's probably true. I mean, you might agree with his conclusion, but
I think that particular statistic was pretty compelling. I mean, that one, you know, that one is pretty compelling. You know, I mean, I don't think you completely said what the statistics was.
Well, I'm trying to remember what he said, but basically, I think he said something like everybody all of a sudden got really got their in an uproar because of the fact that the majority of Black children were growing up in homes without a father present. And he dismissed it as being, well, that's just a result of the fact that the married couples are having smaller families now. So that's skewed the ratio. But
Yeah, that's exactly what I understood, okay?
yeah,
But I just wanted to make sure, I mean, I knew what you were talking about, but I just wanted to make sure you said it right, because
Yeah.
I don't think you said it completely, and somebody here might not remember. Okay, can we, let's go ahead and go to that, and you let me know whether I can move, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, did I jump?
yeah, there
That's
was,
fine.
Okay. Is this, we can move here, the next one now?
yeah,
You people let me know when I can move.
You know, I do have a comment to make. I have an acquaintance who was a very conservative Black female. And when you talk about what's being talked about in that passage about the absence of Black fathers in so many children are raised in single family households. And I think this is a typical conservative talking point. I don't have any sense of whether it's true or not. But her comment, we had a discussion about it, and I haven't gone back to try to research it. She said that the fundamental reason behind that reality was a direct result of the way the welfare system was structured. And, you know, because the women get stuck with the kids and the men are kind of free to fly, and the welfare system reinforces that dependency. It was an interesting comment. She was very critical of the way the welfare system operates, in that it tends to perpetuate the situation in which single Black women tend to be raising the children and the men can't be found. She was very specific that was a direct result of the way the welfare system operated, and that it was destroying Black families.
Very few people. It turns out that some people did have children to get the welfare, but it was a minuscule group of people who did that. Okay, now I want to talk about something that Chuck is an expert on, because he teaches this, about rational decision making. Okay.
Yeah, that's a tough
You
subject.
teach that, no? Don't you teach rational decision making?
Yes,
Well, anyway,
I do. Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, so here I feel
Yep.
like I'm telling my father how to have children. But anyway, so anyway, the big deal is the following. There was an analysis a few years ago. If you are a poor Black woman, or nowadays a poor women from, poor white women or whatever, what is the rational thing to do when there is a dearth of marriageable men who can supply and help them do that? Well, what is the rational thing for that woman to do? Well, the rational way for her to do is to have children as early as possible, even as a teenager, because when they are they to have it early, they can have their parents, the grandparents, help them raise the child, and they can concentrate on many jobs like clerks and all that, where the prime determinant of income is seniority. You know, you get to be a clerk or you get to be like that a lot of the time. You work for a year. I mean, like the secretaries that we have in the department, they work for a long time. After a little while, they become institutions, and you know, and they get the raises and all that. So basically, that group of people, seniority is the biggest determinant of security at work and income. So there is actually a rational decision to, you know, it's a rational decision to do that, and we tend to moralize that. Those people, are, you know, whatever, but financial incentives play a big role in how people behave, you know. So anyway, did I pass my, you know, did I do my homework, Chuck? Have a
You
rational.
did, yeah. 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 Again, whenever, you know, the classic thing is whenever you're judging the way someone makes a decision and you think it's irrational, like 99 out of 100 times, it's just simply you don't understand the framework that they're making that decision in. So it's exactly what you said. It's easy for us to moralize it or say, oh my gosh, you know, why don't you go, you know, to college or whatever, you know, to lift yourself up. And if you truly look at the alternatives from that person's perspectives and the reward systems and things like that, a lot of times they are making a rational decision. And
I like
you know,
the word lot rather than
so
99%.
you know, yeah, the you know, as we go through this, for example, this chapter on gender, again, and I don't know if this, I don't know if I'm missing it along the way or if it's to the end of the book or whatever, but you know, like, but how do we try to turn these things around? Is it a matter of if a bunch of people become enlightened with by reading a book like this, and it slowly makes its way into policy and this and that? So what is the what's are we doomed to just perpetuate this, or are there things that can turn these things around? That's my question.
Okay,
And,
one thing that I want to say is that one of the reasons I'm liking so much the tyranny of merit is because at
uh-huh.
the end he offers solutions. He actually
Okay.
offers solutions. Now, the way I see this book that we're reading right now, is that it gives us an understanding that policies are the main culprit of the problems. Okay, but it doesn't tell us really how to change those, you know, those policies. It just aims to give you an
Yeah.
understanding that policies are really going on. If I look at the book Caste, it actually it actually looks at the sociology of racism, things like caste and all that. So you end up with an understanding of the sociology. Now, do those books have an effect? And my answer is yes. For example, how many of you heard that Mackenzie, the wife of that Cuban American, you know, should I call Bezos a Cuban American if his the stepfather was a Cuban, Cuban, or do they have to be a real father? You know, do I have a right to call Jeff Bezos a Cuban American or not? What do you think? Both.
He did okay besides being part Cuban, I guess. So yeah.
Well, anyway,
Well, you know, I mean, the Cuban philosophy that the best people in the world could also explain why Bezos was so successful. So, you know, I think
well,
that
I mean, a lot of them are successful, but
yeah,
anyway, there are a bunch of people who feel like that. Like, you know, I mean, many groups of Germans feel that way. A lot of, yeah, I would say that if you are in a place like the United States and you don't have some kind of degree of self-confidence of that type, with the discrimination against Latinos and all that, you know, if you don't have that kind of strong ego, you're dead in the water. Okay, I would say the same thing with somebody from Appalachia. If you don't have some kind of really strong ego, the stereotyping of yourself will destroy you. You know, but anyway, uh, I don't know what I was talking about. I went all over the place.
But you're talking about Mackenzie Bezos and her
Okay,
Probably about her
I have
gift.
stories. She went ahead and gave a lot of money, like $4 million, and she gave it to. She didn't give that money. She didn't give it to Harvard and all that because all these people have all this money. They give it to Harvard and Yale and all that with the idea they give them the scholarships and kind of stuff. And it turns out that one of the things that I learned in the tyranny of merit, that the probability that a college degree at Harvard or where it takes somebody from a lower quintile and takes it to the top quintile is just about 2%. They don't really, they're not really effective mechanism for upward mobility. But anyway, I read about people, executives and all of that have read these books and have changed the way they are, okay? And there is a group of people, this woman, because of reading these books, she decided to give this book to poor, black colleges, and not only black colleges, but actually colleges that are actually helping poor whites and poor anything. And those actions would not happen if there were not these books that provide insight into the soul of people that Mackenzie Scott, I think that's what she calls herself now, She doesn't want to be associated with a Cuban anymore. So anyway, I think these books have an effect in ourselves, and a lot of people, when I pen these books, I read these books and they tell me, and Bia was one of them, they tell me, why are you doing that? You can't do anything. And my statement is that there's one person that is worth changing, myself. So even if I cannot do anything, if I become a better person, if I think in a more just way, if I get rid of hates, if I am unjust and all that, even if I don't have any effect, and I had the effect on one person. And,
That's right.
And basically, and once in a while, a person does what I do that has power and all that, and that person makes big changes. It may not be enough to change everything, but it may be enough to change a few people. And that's maybe not good enough, but positive. Okay, does that make sense? Let me go ahead and back to the book now, okay? I mean, that's the way I'm thinking here. You let me know when I can move.
Yeah, I think we just finished talking about this one, Ramon.
That was a funny story about his mom and dad and their vows. That was pretty funny.
By the way, my vows with my wife, I wrote them with my wife just to avoid any kind of difference between male and female. So I was a feminist from the very beginning. When I was 18, I refused my two wives to accept my last name because I didn't think it was fair. So my wife is Esrekis and my previous wife was Dabadi, and I refused to have her do that because it would indicate subservience. So anyway, it gives me a headache because a lot of the time, they don't know I'm married.
Good for you that you're willing to put your beliefs right at the beginning. I think that's great. The other comment I'll make is it's more common for people now for women not to change their names, at least anecdotally. So you just may have been ahead of the curve, Ramon.
Well, I mean, at that time there was a big, from what I understand, this is what's happening. At the time, it was the time of the change. Women start wearing suits. Remember those suits that women were wearing and all that? And, as more and more women got into positions of power, then all of a sudden they start feeling comfortable by wearing more feminine things. But for a while, they were just trying to impersonate men because those are the only ones that had the breaks. And, nowadays, a lot of women that are feminine more avenues. You don't reject a woman anymore by just being whatever. So anyway, so let's go back to sharing.
And I've got to bounce here in about 4 minutes, by the way.
Okay, we're finishing.
Let's just get through. Yeah. Those were some shocking statistics about you know, educated Black women versus, you know, whether it's for losing a baby or whatever. Those were pretty shocking, actually. Again, but with an asterisk, as Ken said, there's no real preferences, and as Ramon pointed out, you know, it is sort of targeted use of statistics.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit of it is
But if they're even
motivated.
close to true,
Is motivated thinking. There's some motivated thinking in this use of statistics. Okay, I mean, not motivated thinking, motivated
Yeah.
reasoning. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I guess another question would be, do Black women have worse health outcomes than whites because they get inferior treatment, or is it because of the stress they endure in their daily lives? I don't know.
Well, one statistic that I thought it was incredible is that blacks from Africa, they don't have any problem with high blood pressure. And the minute they start moving here, you know, they just all of a sudden they get the same, and they keep eating their own food. They don't change the food. They don't change anything. They don't do anything. In fact, they hate Black Americans. They do their own thing. But the microaggressions all day long. I mean, there's nothing more hurtful than feeling humiliated.
Right.
There's nothing more hurtful than feeling humiliated in a small way, you know. And
then having to basically suck it up.
no, I mean, you can't show it. And many times I talked about Aristotle's psychology. Aristotle already mentioned that one of the ways to hurt the person the most, if the person works to the point where they have earned a position and respect and a position, and you don't give it to them, that produces tremendous problems. Okay, that was all the way back to Aristotle. Okay, but anyway, can we let's go ahead and go back to this, because you let me know, Chuck, when we can move. Well, I think we can finish that chapter, by the way. So let me ask you something. We'll keep moving with this book, and I guess we are.
Ramon, can you just go back to the chapter? There's about. I want to just look at one particular thing and make sure I interpret this correctly. Go back to go to page 189. So it's go back a page.
I'm in page 189 now.
We'll just go back a page and go back another page. And go back one more. Go forward one and stop right there. Yeah. Don't worry. I can't find it, but there was just a particular paragraph that I thought was just really telling, and I can't.
Well, tell us what is in the
paragraph after the one that starts with. Yeah, don't worry about it.
No, go ahead and mention what the paragraph is about, and make the point.
Oh, it says it says basically, it says to be anti-racist is to reject not only the hierarchy of races, but of race genders. To be feminist is to reject not only the hierarchy of genders, but of race genders. To truly be anti-racist is to be feminist. To truly be feminist is to be anti-racist. To be anti-racist and feminist is to level the different race genders, is to root the inequities between the equal race genders and the policies of gender racism. It just, to me, that was the one that,
I think
again, unless you're aware of the intersectionalism,
Chuck, I think
you
that
know,
the guy went
you
overboard.
maybe assume that, yeah,
I think the guy went overboard. The big point of the guy, he just went overboard with rhetorics. The big deal about that guy is that you should
Yeah.
treat every group, every group, whoever they are, and give them, don't discriminate against them because they're gay or
Yeah.
they're anything.
Yeah.
Just don't discriminate. The big deal is that you shouldn't discriminate against women. You cannot discriminate. You still discriminate against women. Why not discriminate against blacks? So you have to get rid of yourself, this idea, discrimination against any group of people.
yeah,
For whatever reason, you got to
Yeah.
get rid of that, because if you discriminate against one, you discriminate against the others. At least you make yourself susceptible to, you start discriminating against this group, and then it's easier to discriminate against the third group. So you have to clean yourself
Yeah.
out of this idea of stereotyping people and treating people differently because of the group they come from. That's the way I interpret it.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
No, I think
And I guess the point is to me that transitioned from like even the term anti-racist implies you're really just on that one dimension, but this chapter kind of suggested no, anti-racist may not even be the right term. It's anti really anything that discriminates in any fashion. So anyway, that's just
discriminate
that was the aha.
against people, for things that shouldn't matter. That's the way I would say it.
Right.
You should
Right.
not discriminate against people
Yeah.
for things that shouldn't matter. If a guy comes to you, a woman comes to you and she can do the job or whatever, and even a Cuban who can do the job, you shouldn't discriminate. So that's the way I see it. But anyway, do we agree on the new format? Basically the new format is the following. Anybody who has an article that is really insightful,
Okay.
we'll go ahead and prepare like a one-page summary in the way I did it, underlined so that it's quick to read. And then we are finishing this book. And then after that, we'll start, going over the tyranny, whatever,
Okay.
Is that okay? Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Anything else?
right.
I particularly
Yeah.
like the session today. Can we go?
yes. Have a great holiday. Are we going to meet next week? Are we taking next week off?
Well, what is next week?
Christmas.
Yeah, I knew you were going to ask that hard question. Is that Christmas Day?
It's
hang on.
Christmas Day. Yeah. Christmas night.
Yeah. Are we going to take Christmas night off? or
No,
are we
no.
gonna-
We're going to. We have to skip that, and maybe I don't know when would be the next one after that.
January 1st.
Yeah. Why don't we skip the next two? Unless you want to. What do you think? January 1st is not a particularly important day for me.
Doesn't matter to me.
How about you people?
It's a good way to start the new year.
Well, let's
I don't-
postpone the next one, and not to have the next one, and then okay.
First-
I would like to, given that Bob is not here, I would like to post this in YouTube with a private link so that he can actually participate. Nobody can see it unless they have a private link. Is that okay?
Yeah,
Yeah, no
Sure.
problem.
I really like the way the meeting went today.
I do too.
I'm particularly happy with myself that I didn't go crazy, like talking like.
You made good points like you always do, and that's
Yeah, but I mean, I was organized today.
well, you've been organized before, but you were
Yeah.
exceptionally organized today.
Okay, well, I'll see you all later. Bye.
All right, have a good